Welcome, and thank you for taking part in Fundamentals Refresher 2 training. Through this training, you'll receive annual refreshers on Emergency Preparedness Plans Part 2 of 2, Personal Protective Equipment, Housekeeping Guidelines, and Vehicle and Equipment Usage and Maintenance. Welcome, and thank you for participating in Part 2 of 2 of Emergency Preparedness Plans training. Despite planning to avert all emergency scenarios, we must be prepared to act in the event that our planning fails. The Emergency Preparedness Plan is our resource in such cases. In this training, we will examine the emergency plans within the Emergency Preparedness Plan document that apply only to construction sites and were not covered in Part 1 of 2 of this training. We will discuss how to properly complete the EPP document, discuss how to properly maintain the EPP document, and determine when each workplace must discuss or practice their plans. Emergency preparedness plans are required in all workplaces. As per the Occupational Health and Safety Act, a constructor shall establish for a project written procedures to be followed in the event of an emergency and shall ensure that the procedures are followed at the project. Some exceptions to completing the EPP document exist for small projects of short duration. Consultation with the Health and Safety Manager is required for exceptions. The Emergency Preparedness Plan is an extensive document that provides response procedures should the following emergencies occur: medical emergency, fire emergency, power line contact, trench rescue, confined space emergency, severe weather and natural disasters, chemical spill, fall arrest suspension, and violence or harassment. In this presentation, we will elaborate on the 5 highlighted plans that were not covered in Part 1 of 2 of this training. The Power Line Contact Emergency Plan is on page 8, and it may not apply to your workplace. If it does, check this box. This plan provides execution procedures, post-execution procedures, and space to identify site-specific emergency notes that may be required to supplement the provided plan. Powerline Contact Emergency Plan applies to equipment or vehicles making contact with power lines or making contact with power structures that causes the power lines to come down. When contact is made, first, stay where you are. Another wrong move may result in a serious injury or fatality. The machine and you may be at the same electrical potential as the power line, and there may be a current flowing through the ground. Don't touch anything outside the machine. You might create another path to the ground for the electrical current. Warn others to stay at least 10 meters away. Second, call the hydro company and emergency services. Have someone call the utility to get help. The number is found on the emergency contact sheet of the EPP. Also, call 911 or the emergency responders in your area. Third, if you must get out, only as a last resort, if you must get out of the machine due to fire or other hazards, you must do so without touching the machine and the ground at the same time. Jump about 45 to 60 centimeters away from the machine, landing with feet together and arms close to your body. Keep your feet together, touching, and shuffle at least 10 meters away. Your heels should never pass your toes. This method is recommended over the hop method. Fourth, rescue by professionals only. When a power line has fallen, always consider it to be energized. Stay back at least 10 meters. Rescue can only be attempted safely by a person trained to use special live line tools. Never attempt a rescue if you are untrained. The Trench Rescue Emergency Plan on page 11 may not apply to your workplace. If it does, check this box. This plan provides execution procedures, post-execution procedures, and a space to identify site-specific emergency notes that may be required to supplement the provided plan. When executing a trench rescue emergency plan, the goal is to extract the victim without causing additional and undue harm to that victim. All procedures and devices are considered fair use when the victim's life is truly in danger, providing the device or procedure does not endanger the life or well-being of anyone. No two scenarios will be alike. These procedures will require improvisation if executed. General procedures for responding to a trench rescue emergency always include immediately calling 911 if there is any reason to believe a person has been injured, and proceed by notifying all workplace staff and visitors. The coordinator shall take the lead in the rescue, but only until emergency services personnel arrive on site and assume control. At this point, site staff shall assume a supporting role as required by the emergency services team. When heavy equipment has fallen into a trench, trapping someone inside, extraction of the equipment shall take place only when the person has been removed safely from the equipment. If the person cannot be removed without the equipment being removed, then extraction of the equipment can take place first. The victim must in this case remain in the safest possible position in the cabin if possible, and be informed of how the extraction is to take place, once again, if possible. During a trench rescue emergency plan, the coordinator must delegate to his team the following tasks. Clear the scene of all people not involved in the plan. Clear from the sides of the trench any tools, materials, or equipment that could fall into the trench should further collapsing occur. Turn off all equipment and devices that cause vibration and could lead to further trench collapse. Clear a path for access by the emergency services team, a path suitable for large vehicles if possible. And assign and clear a staging area and command post where the resources required for the rescue are made readily and closely available. During a trench rescue emergency plan, the coordinator must assess the gravity of the situation. This includes considering first the situation. Determine what has happened. Is this a cave-in or non-cave-in incident? Victims of a cave-in will be injured and/or trapped by soil. Non-cave-in accidents may include medical problems, trauma, electrocutions, and hazardous atmospheric conditions. Second, the hazards. Determine the hazards in the general area and the rescue area. Third, the victims. Determine how many victims are injured or trapped. Assess the victims' injuries. Fourth, the trench detail. Determine if the trench and soil details are different than originally determined. And fifth are the resources. Determine which site resources will be required to execute the plan. Equipment and various other materials can be used to prevent further collapse. Ladders may be needed for access and egress. Equipment and hand tools can be used for extraction from the victim's buried state and from the trench. Medical devices should be brought to the scene in the event the extraction occurs before emergency services arrives. During a trench rescue emergency plan, the emergency team, under the direction of the coordinator, must make the trench safe. Place access and egress ladders into the trench. Decide on the shoring system to be used. Create a safe zone in the non-collapsed area of the trench from both ends if possible by implementing an improved shoring system or improving the angle of repose. Remove dirt from the collapse zone while remaining in a safe zone, and secure all utilities, pipe, or other obstructions in the trench. There are two types of trench rescues. The first is victim extraction for incidents without collapse. In this case, create a safe zone around the victim. Remove objects trapping the victim, such as pipes, lumber, machinery, and so on. Assess the victim's condition and properly package the patient and remove the patient from the trench. The second is victim removal for incidents with collapse. In this case, begin dirt removal while operating from a safe zone. Continue extending the safe zone into the collapse zone. Create a safe zone around the victim. Uncover the victim to below the diaphragm using small shovels, buckets, or by hand, and assess the victim's condition. Completely uncover the victim, properly package the patient, and remove the patient from the trench. The confined space emergency plan is found on page 14, and it may not apply to your workplace. If it does, check this box. This plan provides guidelines to create execution procedures using a confined space entry permit and post-execution procedures. When using the confined space entry permit and plan document, you are performing a risk assessment that then requires you to identify rescue personnel, methods of communication, methods of rescue, rescue equipment, medical PPE, and a diagram of the space. Completing the confined space entry permit is made easier using the guidelines of the confined space emergency plan in the emergency preparedness plan document. The guidelines ask that you consider the following. First is responder safety. Perform an initial assessment of the situation in space and develop hazard mitigation procedures. Second is the safety of the victim. Is the victim conscious? Is the victim unconscious? Will medical attention be required? Will medical personnel need to be notified? What type of rescue equipment will be required to safely remove the victim? Is there a timeline associated with the rescue because of the condition of the victim? These are the questions that you must consider for safety of the victim. Third is an assessment of the situation. Consider the hazards present, hazard mitigation, distance required for rescue, and rescue problem within capabilities of the team. Fourth is the type of rescue, offensive or defensive. Will it be a non-entry rescue? Will it be entry by others? Or will it be entry by trained employees from the company? And fifth is the development of the rescue plan. Consider survival time of the victim, confined space characteristics, assignment of roles, sufficient personnel, numbers, experience, and training, appropriate equipment, apparatus, and materials, communication and communication equipment, ventilation of space, monitoring of space, air supply for rescuers if required, control of all sources of energy and engulfment hazards, and rigging and other rescue equipment that might be needed. The chemical spill emergency plan is found on page 19, and it may not apply to your workplace. If it does, check this box. This plan provides execution procedures that are consistent with the training in the eco-friendly construction course of the new Higher Fundamentals program, post-execution procedures, and a space to identify site-specific emergency notes that may be required to supplement the provided plan. The fall arrest suspension emergency plan on page 21 may not apply to your workplace. If it does, check this box. This plan provides guidelines to create execution procedures using a working at heights protection plan, and it provides post-execution procedures. When using the Working at Heights Protection Plan document, you are performing a risk assessment that then requires you to identify rescue personnel, methods of communication, methods of rescue, rescue equipment, and medical PPE. In any case where fall arrest equipment is being utilized in the workplace, a fall arrest suspension rescue plan must be developed and rehearsed. Every such case is unique and calls for special attention. Project managers and the health and safety manager must be involved in this plan development. The fall arrest suspension emergency plan provides clear direction on the steps that must be followed prior to rescue efforts. The fall arrest suspension emergency plan then provides 4 options for rescue execution procedures. 1 is elevating work platform rescue. 2 is ladder rescue. 3 is rescue from work area or floor below. And 4 is basket rescue. These emergency plan options are explored in the Working at Heights training program. For all the emergency plans we've just discussed, in all cases where an emergency plan has been executed, when the emergency response is over, post-execution procedures must begin. For each emergency plan, there are specific post-execution procedures provided in the EPP document. Common to all the emergency plans are the following post-execution procedures. Investigate the incident and complete the appropriate report on e-compliance. Take photos and notes in abundance. Preserve incident properties for investigative purposes. Keep detailed records of all interactions with emergency services personnel. And determine whether the emergency plan was properly observed. Before we conclude this presentation, we must address a couple of housekeeping notes. All the emergency plans within the EPP document provide space to add site-specific notes. The need for site-specific notes must be carefully considered. The EPP is extensive but still generic in its contents. A common example of a site-specific note is prescribing the need to send someone to the roadside to flag an emergency personnel because the site is not visible from the nearest road. Be sure to use these spaces to fill the gaps in the plan. Drills must be conducted for specific emergency plans within the Emergency Preparedness Plan document when the likelihood or severity is higher than what would be common in our workplaces. For example, conducting drills for emergency power line contact would not be necessary because equipment must periodically pass under power lines. However, if the equipment is actively working under power lines which it can make contact with, conducting a drill is necessary. In all cases where it has been determined that drills must be conducted, the drills must be performed no less than once every 3 months. When revisiting the EPP or performing an emergency plan drill, use the Tailgate Talk Emergency Preparedness Plan template on e-compliance. In the case of the office, annual fire drills are required as per fire code. In summary, the Emergency Preparedness Plan is an important, legally required document. It must be completed and reviewed by all staff prior to commencing work activities. It must be periodically revisited and revised. It must be prominently posted in the workplace. Drills must be conducted for high-risk emergency scenarios and, in other words, plan, prepare, practice. Welcome, and thank you for taking part in personal protective equipment training. The purpose of this training is to provide workers with examples of the personal protective equipment available, distinguishing between standard PPE, which provides basic protection from common hazards, and specialized PPE required for tasks with specific hazards that standard or general PPE does not adequately address. We shall also provide the knowledge to be able to pick the most suitable protection for a task, provide care instructions, and discuss company and legal expectations related to PPE. PPE must be kept in good working order and must be replaced if it is damaged or has expired. It must also meet the various Canadian standards, such as those provided by CSA. Look for the CSA triangle to ensure protective equipment is reliable and that their use meets CSA standards. Workers and visitors on all our construction sites are required to wear the following at all times: CSA or ANSI standard Class E Type 1 or 2 head protection, CSA certified Grade 1 safety footwear, high visibility upper body garments such as a safety vest or better. Workers and visitors not wearing the following will not be allowed to work on or visit any construction site. You must seek to eliminate hazards first before relying on PPE. Wearing PPE is our last line of defense against injury. First, look at eliminating the hazard at the source so that the hazard no longer exists. Second, attempt to place controls on the path of travel. These come in the form of engineered controls. Third, apply administrative controls that guide you through the task in the safest possible manner. Only then can we place some reliance on PPE keeping us safe from harm. When completing a critical task, ensure that the applicable safe work practice, safe job procedure, tailgate talk, and in the case of a controlled product, safety data sheet has been referenced. These resources list the PPE needed to safely complete the task, in addition to the engineered and administrative controls required to keep you safe. The tailgate talk on PPE selection is an excellent resource in all cases. Eye protection must be readily available at all times. On some job sites, their use is mandatory. Eye hazards fall into three categories: impact, splash, and radiation. Depending on the type of work, you may have to protect against more than one of these hazards. Look for the CSA logo on the frames of glasses to ensure they meet industry standards. This PPE type is governed by CSA standards for industrial eye and face protectors and the Ontario regulation on construction projects. There are 7 classes of eye protection to consider when choosing the right protection for the job. The first class, Class 1 spectacles, is general PPE. Classes 2 to 7 are specialized PPE. That includes goggles, welding helmet, welding hand shield, hoods, face shields, and respirator face pieces. Depending on the type of work, you may need to wear more than one type of protection at a time. For example, best practice when using a cutoff saw is to wear spectacles with a face shield over top. The following classifications provide a general overview of eye protectors for each hazard group. The best eye protection results from a combination of different classes of eye protectors. 1. Group A is flying objects. Minimum eye protection recommended is Class 1 spectacles. Optimum eye protection recommended are goggles worn with face shields to provide eye and face protection. 2. Group B is for flying particles, dust, wind, etc. Minimum eye protection recommended is Class 1 spectacles. Optimum eye protection recommended are goggles for dust and splash, worn with face shields to provide eye and face protection. 3. Group C is heat, glare, sparks, and splash from molten metal. Minimum eye protection recommended is Class 1 spectacles with filter lenses for radiation protection. Side shields must have filtering capability equal to or greater than the front lenses. Optimum eye protection recommended are eye cup or cover goggles with filter lenses for radiation protection, worn with face shields to provide eye and face protection. Be sure to provide your eye protection with proper maintenance. Clean safety glasses and goggles regularly with mild soap and water. Wash lenses with water before wiping to prevent scratching. If water is not available, blow the dust and dirt off of them before wiping. Store eye protection preferably in a clean, dust-proof case or in a safe place such as the top shelf of a locker where it won't be scratched or otherwise damaged. Replace safety glasses if frames are bent, and replace goggles if headbands are loose, twisted, knotted, or worn. Replace any kind of eye protection if lenses are scratched or pitted and they impair vision. Give proper consideration to hand protection. Our hands are the most valuable tool we have. We must be sure to protect them at all times from hazards such as common scrapes and abrasions, and from hand-arm vibration syndrome. There are plenty of different products available for the many hazards we may encounter. Common glove materials have limited protective properties and do not protect against all hazards. Some solvents, degreasers, and other liquids can penetrate and/or dissolve rubber, neoprene, or PVC. If you are handling chemicals or hazardous materials, make sure to reference the supporting safety data sheet, work practices, job procedures, and/or industry best practices to ensure you have the appropriate protection. Specific hazards like welding require the use of approved gloves. Leather, fabric, and coated fabric gloves protect from scrapes, moderate cold, and sunburn. These gloves are considered general PPE. Many other gloves are considered specialized PPE, such as high-grade leather, aluminized, aramid, and synthetic gloves, which protect against more serious cuts, blows, and extreme temperatures. Some protect against vibration. Certain types can be used when welding. Also specialized are butyl, latex, neoprene, and nitrile gloves, which are worn when dealing with chemicals, and these sometimes come in disposable form. Wash reusable gloves in hot water and detergent soap. Do not bleach them. Gloves are mandatory in some cases per the construction regulations for Ontario. Careful not to neglect your gloves. They too require maintenance. Keep gloves clean and dry. Have a backup pair in case gloves get wet or must be washed and need to dry. Check for holes, cracks, and other damage before each use, and replace worn or damaged gloves right away. Hearing protection devices are a must when working around machines, saws, grinders, or anything else that produces noise exceeding 85 decibels. 85 decibels is noise equivalent of that produced by a medium-sized room full of people in conversation. With many different choices of devices, it is important that we are trained to recognize which devices are the right ones for the task. Sometimes the need for hearing protection goes undetected due to desensitization, especially when operating heavy equipment. Operating some heavy equipment safely does require the use of hearing protection. Here is a list of common construction machinery and their various decibel outputs. If you're unsure, use hearing protection. As you can see from this list, noise levels of 85 decibels or higher are far more common than not. Some additional key points regarding hearing protection. There is risk of hearing loss if hearing protection devices are not worn in noisy environments, and hearing loss is permanent. Wearing a hearing protection device is required in all situations where noise exposure may damage hearing. To be effective, an HPD must not be removed even for short periods. Various HPDs are available to accommodate differences in ear canal size, jaw size, head size and shape, comfort level, compatibility with other forms of PPE, and so on. And proper fit is essential to achieve maximum protection. All hearing protection devices come with an NRR rating, typically between 25 and 35. Higher is better. Pick a type that you find comfortable. That way you are more likely to use it. Consider the climate. Muffs might be too hot for the conditions. Consider ease of use. If the noise is mainly low frequency, you should consider selecting a higher protection level because low frequency noise is more difficult to block. Mounted muffs on your hard hat are a great solution as they provide sufficient protection of common noises, can be used in combination with most earplugs, and are applied quickly while being available for you at all times. All hearing protection requires maintenance. Wipe earmuffs with a damp cloth after each use, store them in a safe place, and replace cushions when they lose their resilience. Wash reusable earplugs every day, store them in a clean case, and replace if plugs are hard or discolored. And wipe canal plugs, those are headband plugs, with a damp cloth after each use. Store them in a safe place so the headband won't get bent or twisted, and replace if the band is damaged and no longer fits comfortably. We tend to associate hazards with things that we can see and hear, but common respiratory hazards we cannot. Trust your instincts if you can smell a strange odor and investigate what it might be while remaining at a safe distance. Other signs may occur such as coughing, sneezing, or itchy eyes. This may be a sign that a hazard is present. Respiratory hazards may be presented as gases, vapors, fumes, mists, dusts, and bioaerosols such as molds. The health effects of inhalation hazards can be divided into the following 8 classes based on the type of effects they cause. Irritants are materials that irritate the eyes, nose, throat, or lungs. This group includes fiberglass dust, hydrogen chloride gas, ozone, and many solvent vapors. Asphyxiants are substances which result in inadequate oxygen levels in the body. This can be due to either vapors that cause oxygen to displace, causing unconsciousness or death, or chemical interference with your body, such as carbon monoxide poisoning. Central nervous system depressants. They interfere with nerve function and cause symptoms such as headache, drowsiness, nausea, and fatigue. Most solvents are central nervous system depressants. Fibrotic materials. They cause fibrosis or scarring of lung tissue in the air sacs. Common fibrotic materials found in construction include asbestos and silica. Carcinogens. They cause or promote cancer in specific body organs. Silica and asbestos are examples of carcinogens. Dusts. Excessive exposure to these substances can be adverse in itself or can aggravate existing conditions such as emphysema, asthma, or bronchitis. Examples include plaster dust, cellulose from some insulation, and limestone dust. Biological hazards include molds, bacteria, or viruses. If inhaled, they can cause eye, nose, and throat irritation, hypersensitivity, pneumonitis, or asthma. Respiratory sensitizers are chemicals such as isocyanates in spray foam insulation, or certain wood dusts. If inhaled, respiratory sensitizers can cause asthma. There are two types of respiratory protection. The first is air purifying respirators. They filter contaminants out of the air. They must be matched to specific hazards, are specific in SDSs for controlled products, and have a limited lifespan based on contaminant levels and filter load. Do not rely on the stated expiry date. The second is supplied air respirators. Supply the wearer with breathable air from a compressor, cylinder, or tank. Offer the best protection against many hazards. They have limitations. For instance, air tanks are bulky and airlines can get tangled, and are the only respirators that can be used for confined space rescue or in dangerous atmospheres. These two types of respiratory protection are specialized PPE. When selecting a filter for your air purifying respirator, refer to the safety data sheet, work practice, or job procedure. The criteria used to identify cartridge types are as follows. The required resistance to oily mists will be rated as N for not resistant to oil, R for resistant to oil, or P for oil proof. And the efficiency needed in filtering airborne particles will be referred to as 95, 99, or 100 rating, and these numbers represent a percentage of filtration. For gas and vapor cartridges, NIOSH has a color coding system to help you identify the correct equipment for your specific hazard. For example, some common colors are organic vapors from solvents, such as those in paints and thinners, require cartridges with a black label. Cartridges approved for acid gases include gases such as chlorine, hydrogen sulfide, and sulfur dioxide, and they have a white label. Yellow labeled cartridges are approved for both organic vapors and acid gases. And cartridges approved for ammonia or methylamine have a green label. Respiratory protection devices require thorough inspection. Prior to each use, inspect the following elements. Check for dust and dirt and wash if necessary. Check that you have the right filter. Check the filter for dust or damage. Check the valves for damage and seating. Check straps and buckles for damage and wear. And check the facepiece for holes, cracks, and splits. Always refer to the manufacturer's manual for full inspection procedures. The maintenance of respiratory protection devices is very important. Clean and disinfect them according to the manufacturer's instructions. Check for holes, cracks, deterioration, and any other problems that could interfere with the effectiveness of protection. Store in a safe location protected from dust, light, heat, cold, moisture, and chemicals. Place the respirator so that the rubber and plastic parts are in a normal position and hold their shape, and do not share your respirators. Once again, always refer to the manufacturer's manual for full maintenance procedures. Protection from the sun is extremely important, yet often neglected. Be mindful of this concern at all times, even on cloudy days. Stay up to date on local weather, particularly the UV index, which helps us to measure the risk of exposure. Be sure to use sunscreen and reapply often as it wears off over time. Sunscreens are assigned a sun protection factor or SPF number that rates their effectiveness in blocking UV rays. Higher numbers indicate more protection. You should use a sunscreen with at least SPF 30. Not all products have the same ingredients, so if your skin reacts badly to one product, try another one or consult your physician. Hats, sunglasses, gloves, and long clothing help in preventing exposure risks. Be sure not to wear a hat under a hard hat as it affects its competency. Hard hats protect us against a variety of hazards, such as cuts, scrapes, and bruises, blows that can cause severe damage to the head and spine. They can prevent electric shock and UV radiation from the sun. Some special notes about wearing hard hats. Do not wear your hard hat backwards unless it is specified with a reversible sign. Never wear a hat underneath a hard hat. Hard hats must meet this standard, CSA or ANSI Standard Class E, Type 1 or 2 head protection. And hard hats are required to be worn on construction sites at all times as per Section 22-1 of the Regulations on Construction Projects. Do not neglect maintaining your hard hat. Clean hard hats regularly with warm water and soap and allow it to air dry. Store head protection out of the sun, away from extreme temperatures, in a safe place where it can't get knocked around and damaged. Check the headband to make sure that it isn't stretched or worn and that the hat fits comfortably on the head. And replace a hard hat if it is cracked, dented, or has taken a heavy blow. Proper CSA-approved footwear must be worn on construction sites as per Section 23-1 of the Regulations on Construction Projects. These can be in the form of a safety boot or shoe, but must have an adequate box toe and sole that will protect the worker against injury. Always look for the CSA green triangle on safety boots to ensure protection and that you are working in accordance with the regulations. Make sure that boots fit snug and stay in good condition throughout their lifespan. Certain materials or activities like concrete, heat work, or constant exposure to water or mud will deteriorate a boot's exterior and shrink its lifespan significantly. Don't neglect maintaining your footwear. Wipe wet or soiled shoes with a clean cloth or paper towel. Air out work shoes after work and check regularly for signs of damage or wear. Have worn or damaged shoes repaired or replaced. And change socks during the lunch break to keep feet and shoes dry if feet sweat a lot. In general, all PPE should be stored clean, dry, and out of the sun. Be sure that dirt and grease is cleaned off as these elements break down the material of the PPE and shorten their lifespan. PPE should be inspected before every use to ensure they are fit to do the job they are designed for. In summary, our bodies are the main tools that we work with, and we cannot afford to treat them with any less care than we do any of our tools. Having the right information to make good decisions when it comes to personal safety is key in our pursuit of zero incidents. Safe work practices, safe job procedures, safety data sheets, manufacturer's manuals, and tailgate talks provide precise guidance on the selection, use, and maintenance of PPE. These resources are readily available and must be referenced. If you are in need of PPE, let your supervisor know without delay. Remember that PPE is the last line of defense against some hazards, and always look first to control the hazard at the source or along the path. Welcome, and thank you for participating in Housekeeping Guidelines training. Good housekeeping on our construction sites is a means by which we improve safety, productivity, and our reputation. We will explore the concerns related to poor housekeeping, the do's and don'ts of housekeeping, everyone's responsibilities towards good housekeeping, and proper storage practices. Poor housekeeping improper storage of materials, and cluttered work areas result in a variety of injuries and illnesses, job site frustration and reduced work production from having to navigate a poorly maintained site and struggling to locate tools and materials, reduced completion quality as a result of the poor site conditions taking your focus away from what matters, Ministry of Labor orders and fines, and negative client and public perception of our company. The don'ts of housekeeping are as follows. Do not wait for the end of the day to clean up. Do not expect anyone else to clean up a mess you created, and do not get into the habit of cleaning coworkers' mess. Do not return tools or materials to areas that they are not assigned to. Do not rearrange storage or staging areas without the consent of the site supervisor. Do not run extension cords or hoses across traveled areas. Do not maintain rubbish piles in place of using bags or bins. And never leave tools, materials, and rubbish in public areas. If you must, ensure it is underwatched or cordoned off and for a limited time only. All sites must plan for good housekeeping. Everything must have a predefined location that it must be placed in or returned to as soon as possible. This means establishing a daily job site housekeeping program that incorporates predetermined material, bin, and office staging areas and parking areas for vehicles and equipment. Regular disposal of rubbish, meaning the location and the method. Individual cleanup duties for all workers, meaning everyone is responsible for their own mess, but might also be responsible for more. Proper piling, stacking, and storage of materials that prevents tipping and collapsing. Materials and equipment being stored away from overhead wires. Assigned work and travel areas that are kept tidy. And signage that warns of all dangers that cannot be eliminated. Even more specifically, you must do the following. Gather up and remove debris as often as required to keep work and travel areas orderly. Clean up as work proceeds. Keep equipment and the areas around equipment clear of scrap and waste and obstruction at all times. If you must run extension cords or hoses across travel areas, cover them well and draw attention to their presence. Keep stairways, passageways, and gangways free of material, supplies, and rubbish. Secure loose or light materials to prevent them from blowing away, and block materials or tools that could roll. Before handling used lumber, remove or bend over protruding nails and chip away hardened concrete. Do not permit rubbish to fall freely or throw tools from any level to a lower level. Lower it by means of an approved device. Separate waste types as much as possible and reuse or recycle as often as practicable. Draw attention to protrusions that can be removed, such as rebar. Communicate that, cap them, and spray or wrap the protrusion. Storage areas should be at least 1.8 meters or 6 feet from roof or floor openings, excavations, or any open edges where material may fall off. Near openings and edges, arrange material so that it cannot roll or slide in the direction of the opening. It is good practice to place signs identifying storage areas. When storing flammable materials, consider using copper grounding to keep static electricity from building up in containers, racks, flooring, and other surfaces. Store fuel only in containers approved by the Canadian Standards Association or Underwriters Laboratories of Canada. Ensure that electric fixtures and switches are explosion-proof where flammable materials are stored. Refer to the safety data sheet for specific information on each product. Follow manufacturer's recommendations for storage. Observe all restrictions concerning heat, moisture, vibration, impact, sparks, and safe working distance. Post warning signs where required. Have equipment ready to clean up spills quickly, and store empty chemical containers in secure areas away from full containers, making them available for special handling and disposal. When storing bags and sacks, do not pile bag material more than 10 bags high unless the face of the pile is supported by the walls of a storage bin or enclosure. Pile on a flat, dry surface, preferably a pallet, so that the bags are easily moved by mechanical means. Do not move piles more than 8 bags high unless fully banded or wrapped. Cross-pile bags and sacks for added stability. Pile only to a safe and convenient height for loading and unloading. And cover bags that require protection from the weather elements. When storing compressed gas cylinders in tanks, store and move cylinders in the upright position. Secure cylinders upright with chains or rope. Lock up cylinders to prevent vandalism and theft. Wherever possible, store cylinders in a secure area outdoors. Keep full cylinders apart from empty cylinders. Store cylinders of different gases separately, and keep cylinders away from heat sources. When heating with propane, keep the space well ventilated. When storing lumber, stack on level pallets or blocks. Stack reusable lumber according to size and length. Remove nails during stacking. Support lumber at every 1.2 meter span. Cross pile or cross strip when the pile will be more than 1.2 meters high, and use straps or ropes if required, and cover lumber that is affected by the weather elements. So how do you know if you've stored lumber properly? That's if you can pick up your pile with forks, travel at a moderate pace, and load the lumber pile onto a truck without losing any of the load. In summary, housekeeping is an ongoing process that must be planned for. Housekeeping failures are a major contributor to construction site injuries and illnesses and reduced production. The most important elements of good housekeeping are predetermined storage, staging, parking, disposal, work, and travel areas. Everyone is responsible for their own mess in addition to any other housekeeping duties that are predefined. Clean and organize as you work. Return everything to its predefined location as soon as possible. And where housekeeping efforts aren't good enough to ensure the protection of the public, use signs, guards, verbal communication, paint, fencing, and so on.
Hello and welcome to Hawkins Contracting's Vehicle and Equipment Usage and Maintenance Training. Thank you for joining me today. The purpose of this training is to prepare employees to effectively and efficiently maintain and use our machinery and trucks. After this training, you should be comfortable filling out a vehicle inspection sheet, know how to do a circle check on machinery and trucks, be familiar with the proper usage of our machinery and trucks, perform small maintenance tasks on some machinery and fleet trucks. Two-stroke engines. Small engines on our gas trimmers, some jumping jacks, concrete saws, chain straws are two-stroke engines. Two-stroke engines require the fuel to be mixed with two-stroke oil. Most of our engines use a mixture of 50-1, which means 50 parts gas for every 1 part oil. Mix a whole 100 milliliter bottle of two-stroke engine oil with 5 liters of gasoline. Four-stroke engines. Some engines on our generators, plate tampers, pumps are 4-stroke engines. 4-stroke engines require straight gas. Each small engine will be marked for straight or mixed fuel. Plate tampers. Pre-use checks. Before starting the engine, you should check oil level in the engine, fuel level, condition of the air cleaner, tightness of the external fasteners, and condition of the fuel lines. How to check air cleaner on a plate tamper. Remove the air cleaner cover, remove the foam element and inspect for holes or tears, replace if damaged. Remove and tap paper element lightly to remove excess dirt, replace paper element if it appears heavily soiled. Never run engine without air cleaner, severe engine damage will occur. Quick cut saws. Pre-use checks. Check the fuel system for leaks, especially the visible parts. Make sure the cutting wheel is suitable for the material to be cut, is in the right position, and in good working order. Both the throttle trigger and its throttle trigger lockout move smoothly. Stop switch must move easily to stop or zero. Check that the spark plug boot is secure. A loose boot can lead to flying sparks which may ignite the escaping fuel air mixture. Check for fuel level and make sure it is mixed fuel. How to replace a blade on a still quick cut. Slide the locking pin if you have one through the bore in the V-belt guard. Turn the shaft with the combination wrench until the locking pin engages with the bore behind the guard. Use the combination wrench to loosen and remove the hexagon head screw. Remove the front thrust washer from the shaft together with the blade. Fit the new blade. Replace the front thrust washer. Tighten the hexagon head screw. Then remove the locking pin. The catches of the front thrust washer must engage in the shaft grooves. Ensure the blade has been installed in the correct direction, and make sure to tighten the hexagon head screw snugly. How to check the air cleaner on our quick cut saws. Undo the screws, remove the filter cover and clean it. Remove the main filter, remove the auxiliary filter, ensure the dirt does not enter the intake area. Clean the filter area, insert new auxiliary filter and new main filter, refit filter cover, and then retighten the screws. Never run the engine without the air cleaner. Severe damage will occur. Daily pre-trip inspection book. Always perform a circle check before driving a fleet truck. Must be done every day that the truck is being used. You may sign off on another worker's circle checks from the same working day. If you see something wrong, tell Richard Tapia. In this area, you put your employer, truck make, license plate number, province, unit number, trailer information. In this area, you put the date, time, location, and odometer kilometers. In this area, you go through each item, and if there's a defect, decide whether it is minor or major. If it is minor, you still may drive the truck. If it is major, you must park the truck and tell Richard Tapia. Finally, in this area, you check whether there are no defects were found. If there were defects, were they corrected, or whether defects will not affect the integrity of the truck. Write and sign your name. Checking oil on fleet trucks. Always check oil with the engine cold. Open the hood of the truck, pull out the dipstick, wipe off the dipstick with a clean, lint-free rag or paper towel. Place the dipstick back into the reservoir, push the dipstick all the way down. Pull out the dipstick again and check to make sure oil is between the fill and full lines. If you see the oil is below the fill line, add oil. Check the color of the oil. Brown and black are fine. Milky colors means something may be wrong. Adding oil. We have Spectra Extreme 15W40 oil inside the shops on our shelves. This oil is good to use in any of our trucks in our fleet. Remove the oil filler cap. Slowly pour small amounts of oil as not to overfill, which could hurt the engine. Wait about a minute after you've poured the oil before you check it again on the dipstick. Keep checking and filling until the oil shows between the fill and full lines on the dipstick. You should not have to normally pour more than 1 liter of oil into the engine. If you do, something may be wrong. Checking the air filter. With the hood open and engine off, find the air box, which is usually at the front of the engine bay. Take the top off the air box, remove the air filter, and inspect it for excessive dust. If there is a lot of dust, bang the air filter a few times. If the filter is still dirty, it needs to be replaced. Checking tire pressure. Look for the recommended tire pressure on the driver's door jamb of the truck. Always check the tire pressure cold. Remove the stem cap. Use pressure gauge to check each tire. Replace the stem cap. Fill up low tires using air compressor into the shop or at a gas station. Securing your load. Use the right straps for the job, the appropriate size and strength, the right amount of tie-down straps, and make sure they're in good working condition. Tie down to the designated tie-down points on the truck. Keep tie-down straps inside the truck when not being used. Everything in the back of your truck is required to be tied down or covered with a tarp or tonneau cover. Loads exceeding 5 feet or more outside the back of the truck need to be flagged with a red marker or flag. Each truck needs to be stocked with some important items. Fleet trucks will be checked by Richard Tapia monthly to make sure the items are kept up to date and stocked. These items are a CVOR, ownership for the truck and trailers, insurance, Hawkins accident report, a 5-pound fire extinguisher, first aid kit, spill kit, JHAs, workplace inspections, equipment inspections, daily pre-trip inspection book, the most recent green book, 1 set of booster cables, 2 sets of ratchet straps, and windshield washer fluid. When pulling one of Hawkins' trailers, you must inspect it just as you would a fleet truck. Here are some things to check. The pin securing the hitch to the receiver on the truck, make sure it is intact and the cotter pin is intact and in locked position. Check the trailer tongue lock, make sure it is in place and functioning. Make sure you're using the right ball size or pintle hook. Check the safety chains. Check the electrical wiring and plugs. Make sure reflectors are in good condition. Make sure brake lights, signal lights, and marker lights are working. Check the tires, including wear, air pressure, and lug nuts. Check the suspension to make sure it's in good working condition. Take a look at the trailer. Is it in overall good condition? Make sure your load is secured and weight is evenly over the wheels. Check for the trailer ownership, insurance, and CVOR. Know your weight, height, and width limits for the load. Only trucks with the CVOR are allowed to tow Hawkins dump trailer and galvanized flatbed trailer. Other important information about the fleet trucks. Make sure you remove all the garbage from the trucks at the end of the working day. Fuel up trucks upon return if they are below half a tank of fuel. Park trucks in designated parking spots at the yard. If something is wrong or feels wrong with the truck, please tell Richard Tapia. Put filled out white sheets from the pre-trip inspections on the desk in the shop. There should be no more than 7 filled out sheets at one time in the book. Please do not smoke in company truck. It is against the law. Heavy equipment. Proper equipment maintenance and usage is extremely important for safety and productivity. It is important to perform the daily maintenance before starting work so that the machine moves at your beck and call and operates in the best condition without trouble for a long period of time. Equipment pre-use inspection checklists are to be completed every day the machine is used prior to work. They are to be submitted every Friday. Complete all the top fields, job number, equipment description, equipment number, and Monday's date. For each day of use, write your name, signature, and equipment hours. Carefully inspect each item in the 3 categories. Place a check mark for each item that applies or an X if it does not apply. If a problem is found but the equipment is still fit for use, make a note under the appropriate day of the week that includes the name of the person who will correct the problem and notify that person of the problem. If the problem is found making the equipment unfit for use, make a note under the appropriate day of the week that states it is out of service and who will be responsible for the corrective action. Tag the equipment with an out of service tag and notify the person who will correct the problem. Daily checks. Certain things need to be checked on heavy equipment daily. Engine oil, coolant, belt tension, fuel, water separator, battery, electrical wiring, hydraulic oil, and washer fluid. Grease is one of the most important parts of your daily maintenance. Grease should be applied every 10 hours of machine work or more often if operating in a dusty environment. Refer to the machine's owner's manual for general greasing requirements. Checking oil. Engine oil should be checked while the machine is cold. Open the engine bay, pull out the yellow handle dipstick, wipe the dipstick clean, replace it, and pull it out again. Check to see if the oil level is between the 2 notches on the dipstick. If engine oil levels are low, locate the oil filling port, remove the cap, add oil slowly using a funnel so not to spill. Check periodically with the dipstick to make sure you haven't added too much. Checking coolant fluid. Coolant should be checked with engine cold and parked on flat, level ground. Locate the radiator recovery tank. Check to see if coolant level is between the full and low marks on the recovery tank. If coolant fluids are low, remove the lid on the recovery tank. Add antifreeze and water to the specific mixing ratio in the owner's manual. Checking the radiator. With the machine off and engine cold, locate the radiator. Visually check to see if the fins or ribs are clogged. If fins or ribs are clogged, carefully remove any debris. Visually check the rubber hoses for damage. If any rubber hoses are cracked or damaged, they need to be replaced right away. Checking the V-belt. With the machine off and engine cold, locate the V-belt. Visually inspect it for cracks, excessive wear, or if it's torn. If the belt needs to be replaced, do so before using the machine. Checking the air filter. With machine off and engine cold, locate the air filter. Remove the outer dust cover. Remove and clean the outer element only. Never remove the inner element on site to avoid dust from entering the engine. Gently bang the dust out of the outer element if not excessively dirty. Replace the filter if damaged or excessively dirty. Fit the outer element back onto position. Set the dust cover back on with its top marks upwards. To check the water separator, with machine off and engine cold, open the engine bay. Locate the water separator. Make sure the red float is at the bottom of the water separator tank. If you find the float at the drain water level, follow the water separator draining procedure in the owner's manual. To check hydraulic fluid levels, with the machine off and parked on level ground, locate the hydraulic fluid sight glass. Make sure there is enough fluid present that the oil level is near the center line of the sight glass. If fluid levels are low, fill oil through the oil port before starting the engine. To check the battery, with machine parked and engine off, locate the battery inside the engine bay. Read the indicator on the battery. Green means the battery is in good working condition. Black means the battery needs charging. White means the battery needs replacing. If battery needs attention, follow the charging, replacing procedures in the machine's owner manual. To check the track tension, put the machine on a jack stand at the back and lift the front using the bucket. The tracks must be off the ground completely to accurately check the tension. The distance between the rollers and the track should be no more than 20 to 30 millimeters. If adjustment is needed, remove the protective plate on the side of the track assembly. If the track needs more tension, pump grease into the grease nipple until desired tension is achieved. If the track needs to be loosened, remove the grease nipple with the socket wrench, let grease flow out of the hole until desired tension is achieved. Screw grease nipple back into the threaded hole. Grease is an extremely important part of equipment maintenance. The purpose of grease is to provide lubrication for moving parts, act as a barrier for contaminants, and to prevent rust. Without proper grease, various parts may move unevenly, causing unusual noise, pins and bushings to get stuck, entire attachment rattling due to unusual wear. To apply grease to the equipment, grease should be applied to the grease nipples every 10 working hours. Not all machines or fittings need the same amount of grease. Refer to the owner's manual for proper greasing intervals. Be careful not to overgrease as it can cause contamination. Please take a look at the lubrication points on our Kubota skid steers. Here are the lubrication points for our Kubota 3-ton excavator. Many of our excavators will have the same lubrication points. Other important information. Site parking. Machines on site should be parked so that access and egress of machine is safe and on level ground. Machine implements are blocked in or covered with the machine. Machines are parked in highly visible areas to impede theft and vandalism. Buckets, forks, or other implements are on flat level ground. Float moves. To get the machines ready for a float move, you need to clean the tracks or tires, fill the machine with fuel, grease the machine, check oil levels, and clean inside the cab. Summary. Inspect all vehicles and equipment prior to use and use a prescribed inspection sheet. Perform maintenance as per the manufacturer's recommendation and at the prescribed intervals. Tag out damaged and defective equipment and report it so it is repaired quickly and not used when it is not fit for use. Treat it as your own. Well-maintained vehicles and equipment keep us safer and make us more efficient.
Thank you for taking part in Fundamentals Refresher 2 training. Please proceed to the test to complete this course.